Hello, this is Mr. Ellis. We're starting a new unit, Unit 4, in the board site, and I would like to review some information that we went over many weeks ago because I think that it will help you when you're working those problems on the board site. Okay. The new unit concerns looping. As you know, there are three kinds of loops in Java. Okay. We have the while loop, the do while loop, and the for loop. I feel that would be better as I introduce these loops if I show you some code. So let's go to the code. Okay. The while loop, as I've said before, is a pre-test loop. Okay. Meaning that the condition is before the body is executed. It evaluates the condition. If the condition is true, then it executes the statements in the body of the loop. Okay. Unfortunately, it's not an automatic. You have to do two things to ensure that this loop works the way you feel it should. One, you have to what I call prime the pump. You have to make sure that this condition is true when this statement is reached. Okay. I have a variable, int variable, integer variable, and we'll use integers here. Okay. That is what I call the control var, a control variable. Okay. And what I've done is I've set this to 0. My condition is while control var is less than or equal to 10. Obviously, 0 is less than 10, so that condition is true, which means that my body will be executed. Now let's examine what it does in the body. We use the modulus symbol here. I use modulus to check to see if this variable is equal. Some people may say, how do you know it's equal just because you mod 2? Well, anything that's divisible by 2, which if you know about modulus, modulus is the remainder of a division. Okay. And if you divide an even number by 2, the remainder is 0. If it is 0, then that number is an even number. So I'm going to find even numbers between 0 and 10. I Obviously, if you divide 0 by 2, it's going to be 0. So 0 would be coming up as an even number. So I added the condition if it's not 0, it's greater than 0. Okay. So that 0 won't be caught in this loop. The other thing outside of priming the condition, you have to increment the variable, or you have to make the condition false inside the loop. Turn it off. Turn off the loop. If you don't turn off the loop, it will be an infinite loop and you will have issues. Might be logical issues. This little bit of code here is obviously not a logical problem. But if I had 80 statements in here and the conditions were set so that I wanted to turn this loop off at several points, then I may have a logic error in there. So I have to check carefully to make sure that I turn it off so that it doesn't continue to loop. Okay, so I'm going to run this program and everybody should recognize that between 1 and 10 it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I'm going to run this guy and hopefully it'll work. It did. Okay. Now, my situation here is that this is a really easy body. I want you guys to recognize that looping is this is the mechanism. The content of the loop's body depends on the business need. And if you are looping through 100 statements and you're turning the loop off at several points, you need to check each point where you're going to turn that off to make sure that you end that loop. Okay, going forward, The next loop that we're going to look at is the for loop. Now, the for loop is an easier loop. I call it a determined loop. It has everything you need. It's primed, it has a condition, and it has an incrementation right there in the signature of the loop. Okay. And these three things, now I'm going to say this, you can use more than one variable. You can decrement instead of increment. Instead of going plus plus, I could have gone a negative negative, or basically I could have gone plus equals 2. Okay. But I'm going through here one at a time because I want you to recognize that you can use the modulus to see if a number is divisible by anything. Divisible by 3, divisible by 5, okay? And it is a handy little tool for finding numbers. All right. So my for loop is going to start at 0. It's going to be incremented by 1, and it's going to operate until the control var is, while the control var is less than or equal to 12. When it hits 12, then the final iteration, it'll go back and it'll say 13, and then it'll say no, and it won't execute the body. So the body is, again, a really simple situation where I check to see if a number is divisible by 3 and print it out. Okay. So I'm going to run this as a test, and there you go. These numbers are divisible between 0 and 12. These numbers are divisible by 3. Okay. Now, the do while loop is a perfect loop for menu processing. You will have a object assignment here shortly. We're still working on our Magpie, okay? You should be working on activity 3 of Magpie, but I want to introduce to you the idea of menu processing, okay? And here again now, I'm going to say, excuse me, I'm going to say that the idea is to present the user with a menu, allow them to make a selection from your menu, check that selection, and then provide them with what they have selected. In this case, we have, and this is ugly, so I'm going to call that a capital D. Okay. In this case, we have presented the menu as 1, deposit, 2, withdrawal, 3, exit. Now, obviously, there are more selections in a bank account object. There is transfer, there is check your balance. Those things are also would be presented on this menu, but for the purpose of shortening this video, I would like to just simply say, hey, have you selected deposit? Deposit, you call the deposit method. Have you selected withdrawal? You call the withdrawal method. You've selected exit. You have requested an exit. Goodbye. Okay? If I put any number in there that's not on my menu, or if I put any characters in there that are not on my menu, then I'm going to have the default say, please make a selection or correct selection. All right? Now, where's the control variable in this? In this do while, I usually use a Boolean variable. I turn it on and I say, hey, have you made the correct selection? Have I performed what you want? Yes, but I'm still going to display the menu because if you make a deposit, you may want to make a withdrawal or you want to check your balance. Okay? I give them several opportunities, and the menu keeps being presented to the user until they select exit. When they select to exit, then I turn off my flag, which makes my condition false, and end the program. Now, there's more to it than that. Let's talk. The question is, how many times do I allow them to make a mistake? I keep presenting them with the menu. I turn the flag off only when they ask or request an exit. How many times am I going to allow them to make an incorrect selection? And usually the answer is three. So I would have some kind of counter in here that would check to see how many times they made an incorrect selection, and then I would turn it off for them. You're blind. You can't see this menu. You repeatedly made incorrect selections. So goodbye. You know, some message and then turn it off. Okay. So I would put that in my default, and I would make my counter integer variable. And each time I hit my default, I would add one to it, and then at three, I would turn it off. Hopefully everybody understood that. So now I'm going to, I made a change. I want to save this. Now I'm going to test my menu. Okay. Note, and I think we discussed it in class. In order to get a new line, the backslash n is used. So it's not going to display inline on horizontal. It's going to display in a vertical. And it's going to display in our favorite J option pane. Okay. Now, oh, let's talk. Everybody should know this, but I'm going to mention it anyway. I have used 1, 2, 3. These are integers. The selection is 1, 2, 3. So when they make that selection, I have to parse it as an integer. Okay, because J option pane only accepts strings. So when they put a 1 in, it's going to be a quote unquote 1. And I will parse it as an integer, and then of course I will check this to see if it's 1, 2, or 3. Now I could have just foregone the parsing and put quotes around the ones, because now switch case accepts strings also. So I could use a string as my input, or for that matter, I could just display deposit, withdrawal, and exit, and they would have to type it in. But typos would send me to my default. So now, as easy as I can make it for a user who may be blind, and bear in mind I'm almost blind myself, I use 1, 2, and 3. Okay, I'm going to test this and you'll see the functionality. Let's go with a J option pane right here. Okay, so I'll go 1. It's going to call the deposit method. I'll go 2. It's going to call the withdrawal method. I'll go 5. It says, hey, please make a selection between 1 and 3. 8. Hey, please make a selection between 1 and 3. Let's see. 3. Hey, you've requested an exit. Goodbye. So, bear in mind that we will, at some point after, while we're doing this looping unit, have a new assignment called ATM. That's my traditional, but the object that we're going to create is a bank account. I think we'll use a flat file and read in the account information. I'm going to probably introduce that next week, seeing as how this is Thursday and you guys don't get Friday. So next week. Okay, this has been Mr. Ellis demoing a concept of looping in Java.